As the United States are applying tariffs worth $28 billion, we are responding with countermeasures worth 26 billion euros.
On March 12th, the European Union responded to Donald Trump's 25% tariff on imported steel and aluminum.
They bring nothing but lose-lose outcomes, and we want to focus on win-win outcomes.
The following morning, Mr. Trump's response via Truth Social targeted what he called the EU's nasty 50% tariff on whiskey. He wrote that if it wasn't removed immediately, the US will shortly place a 200% tariff on all wines, champagnes and alcoholic products. Stocks opened lower that morning, the same day that Canada began imposing reciprocal tariffs on more than $20 billion worth of US goods in response to the Trump administration's 25% tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico.
Canada is not the one driving up the cost of your groceries, or of your gasoline, or any of your construction. Canada is not the one putting your jobs at risk. Canada is not the one that is ultimately starting this war.
Only energy products like oil and gas avoid the 25% tariff. They're subject to a lesser 10% tariff in what is fast becoming an international tit-for-tat trade war.
There's a very strong man in Canada who said he was going to charge a surcharge or a tariff on electricity coming into our country.
You can't attack your number one customer, Canada, and not expect a response.
We had a problem with Ontario, and they dropped that when I let them know what we were going to be doing. They dropped it immediately.
The only surprise is that anyone would be surprised that this is becoming a tit-for-tat trade war. This kind of retaliation is something that happens every time countries go down this road. I think that certainly Canadian consumers, for example, and Europeans are going to suffer for the tariffs that those governments are imposing on imports from the US. But you can't expect these governments to do nothing in response to the pressures that the Trump administration is putting on them.
The way Mr. Trump sees it, tariffs are the route to making America great again by luring companies who left the country for more favorable business conditions elsewhere back to the US.
The EU was set up in order to take advantage of the United States.
Including Ireland? Is Ireland taking advantage of the US?
Of course they are. The Irish are smart. You're smart people. And you took our pharmaceutical companies and other companies, but through taxation and proper taxation, they made it very, very good for companies to move over there. And we had presidents and people that were involved in this that had no idea what they were doing, and they lost big segments of our economy.
In response to Mr. Trump's 200% tariff threat on European alcohol, both the EU and US alcohol sectors have condemned the move, pointing out that it's consumers who will suffer as a result of increasing prices.
We're extremely concerned. We really want to say to policymakers in the EU and in the US, enough is enough. We're done being used as bargaining chips.
But in a recent press conference, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that tariffs on steel and aluminum aren't there to punish countries. It's part of an effort to boost domestic capability.
We have made some decisions when it comes to trade policies that have led to the deindustrialization of America and have left us deeply vulnerable to any sort of interruptions in global supplies and or it being used to extort us. If you don't have steel and aluminum, you can't build warships. You can't build airplanes. You're not an industrial economy.
But are tariffs the right approach to bringing both business and industry back home to the US? Or do they actually have the opposite effect?
Obviously, the goal of making America a good place to do business is a good goal. You can't fault the Trump administration for wanting to do that. The problem is that the tariffs are the wrong way to go about it. I think the Trump administration would be a lot better off if they stuck to the game plan from the first Trump administration. Tax reform that would stimulate investment and work, and then also deregulation. Obviously, we're starting to get some of that now with Elon Musk and DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, and the cuts that they are trying to make. But until we get substantive reforms to the domestic economy on the tax front and the regulatory front, and even some of the energy policies, the trade war is really counterproductive.
Unusually, given their predilection for overregulation, taxes, and welfare spending, it's hard to disagree with the EU's point of view on tariffs.
Tariffs are taxes. They are bad for business and worse for consumers. They are disrupting supply chains.
In contrast, the Trump administration believes a little disturbance, as Mr. Trump put it, is worth it.
I'm less concerned about the short term. We want to protect the American worker, that a lot of these trade deals haven't been fair.
But those in the private sector who've complimented the president on his engagement with the business community compared to the last administration believe that tariffs should be lower.
I think the business community understands what the president is trying to do with tariffs. Now, the business community is always going to want lower tariffs everywhere in the world. At the moment, there's some uncertainty. The market's digesting that, but we're going to have to watch and see how this all plays out.
April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in. And whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them.